So this here is our last card, and once again we need to emboss our background. I have this embossing here. It's got some pretty pines in the corner. So same as yesterday, we're going to lightly mist both sides of the cardstock, and I'm going to put it in my folder, and I'm putting it as high up, whoops, it shifted when I closed. I'm putting it as high up to the top left corner here as I can, so that I get as much of those greens on the background as possible. Now I'm going to put it in my machine. It's still set up from the other card. So I've got my tab here open, and I just have one plate in here. I'm going to put it through. If you haven't used a Bake Shop machine very often, I do have a full class here on using a Bake Shop machine and how to use it with different dies, different embossing folders and whatnot. There we go. So that there needs to sit and dry, but I actually have one that is completely done and dried. So we will continue with that one. I have my card base here ready as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp and emboss the sentiment onto the embossed piece here. Now I want to make sure to get the best possible embossed image. So by doing this not before it's on the card, if by chance I happen to make a mistake, I can always swap it out for another one. So I'm stamping my sentiment, and I do rock it a little bit just to make sure to get some clear, like to get the words clear. But I don't rock it so much that I get the edges of the stamp. There we go. Tap it off to get some of the excess powder off. I don't need to brush any away from that. It's all completely clear. So now we are going to emboss it. So when you emboss with a heat gun, often your paper will warp, and this paper warped as well just from the embossing. Like you can see, just the embossing makes it warp as well. So by putting my heat gun underneath it after I embossed it, is try to get it to flatten out a little bit. It never really flattens out fully, but it typically does kind of flatten out a little bit. But I often find when you go and glue it onto the back of your card, just the sturdiness of your card base helps it to stay flat. Oh. I didn't pay attention to the size of my piece here. So I need to cut this shorter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for that glue to dry, and then I'm going to cut it shorter and then glue it on. Wonder if I did the same. Yeah, that one was too big too. All right, because if I put this in my trimmer right now, I'm going to get glue on basically everything. So I'm going to sit this over here to dry, face up, and we'll deal with that later. All right, next step is to do my greenery here. So I'm going to do these ones the same as I did the other ones. I've just got my green pad. I'm working from the base up just to give it a little bit of color variation. Gives it a little bit of shadow, makes it look a little bit more interesting. A little bit more on that one there. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing on our poinsettia for this one. I'm just going to add a little bit to the center. And it's something that you don't really see a lot of. It just deepens the center of it a little bit, add a bit of a shadow. There we go. And then the same as last time, I like to use my fingers to curl it. Just give it a little bit of dimension. It just gives it some flow. It just makes it more interesting. All right, I'm gonna pause and wait till my furnace turns off. All right, it has stopped. My furnace is in my craft room, so it's right a few feet away. And it turns on unpredictably, but heat is good. All right, so I've got my inking done. I've got my petals curved with my hands. I just put some glue on the back and I turned it 180 degrees so that I don't have the same petals on top of each other, just like I did with the first card that we made, the poinsettia. And then I'm going to put some of the same gold that we used for that one and give our poinsettia a nice dimensional center. Perfect, and then we'll set that aside to dry. Oops. Make sure you grab the top and the bottom, and if your petals aren't situated how you like, then you can just twist them. One second, I'm gonna lift it up to do this. You can just twist them a little bit so that you can see the petals that you want, and then set it aside to dry that way. Now, while I was waiting for my furnace, I actually realized that I had not inked the background. So I want to ink all the pines. So I actually took the one that I had just done and I did trim it down so I know that it's the right size. So the same green ink that I used for these guys here, I'm just going to lightly ink the embossing, and I'm only doing the embossing part. It's just going to give a nice foundation for the base of the card here. Perfect. So now we will put glue on this one. And then we will attach it to our card. Now what I like to do once I have it attached to my card is I take an acrylic block to push it down, to hold everything down, make sure it's got some good contact. And then I have a thing full of glass beads here that I also put on top of it. So I'm just putting that aside to let that dry completely. That weight is going to hold everything down. It's going to flatten it nicely. I'll see you in the next video and we'll continue to do our die cuts.